Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us this week. This week, we're going to take you back to April, back to the Texarkana podcast studio in Texarkana, Arkansas, where we were with our partners, William Lunsford and Stephen Hill. And this is our Eclipse special that we did. We were actually able to experience the eclipse out in the research area, and this is what we talk about. So, Matt, let's get to the video.
All right, let's go.
Mama taught me how to live, Daddy taught me how to give. Both of them had their own sins, down to the river. Every man has felt the shame, all our blood, it runs the same. Father, hear us as we pray, down to the river, down to the river. Sing, oh, oh, bury me, carry me.
Hi, welcome to Cryptid Wilderness Research. My name is Daniel Becker, and joining me today, my co-host from Quincy, Washington, Matt Slater.
Hello.
So glad you can be with us today. Today's a special podcast that we're doing. Normally, I'm coming to you from Anchorage, Alaska. However, today, it's Texarkana, Arkansas. We're down here at the Texarkana podcast studio. And such an honor and privilege to have my research partners here with me. First, Mr. William Lunsford.
Hey, everybody.
And Mr. Stephen Hill.
Hello, everyone.
So, gentlemen, welcome to the podcast. And it's such a great privilege to be here with you guys. You know, having done research in the field with both of you guys, and now we get to talk about it. So let's get started with the latest event, and that's the eclipse. William and I were out there at the research area, and you were close by. So, Stephen, why don't you tell us about your eclipse experience?
To me, the eclipse, I didn't realize how beautiful that it would be. I'd seen a few eclipses before, but never in totality like it was yesterday. And part of the reason I was separated from you guys, my daughter was in charge of all of the events going on in the park, and so I didn't want to be somewhere else. I didn't, a lot of anticipated traffic was been talked about for months leading up to this, and it was definitely underwhelming, the amount of people who came into the park, but it was a good crowd. There were probably 80 people or more. There were people from 2 different countries that actually showed up, and it was to me, seeing the eclipse and being able to record it was simply awesome to see that. It's I would love to see another one. I don't know if I'll ever get to, but
Right.
I'd love to see another one. And what when I talked to you and William yesterday, you said that y'all were having a great experience as well from ground zero. So, and yeah, that's it's absolutely fascinating to take that in. I did set an audio recorder out and I listened to a little bit of that today. I've listened to most of it, and I didn't get anything just off the charts crazy with the audio. I've got a few things that might possibly be something, but I'm not going to say for sure right now that it actually is. I'm hoping. I'll try to get it to you guys sometime where maybe you'll have the opportunity to listen to it, and who knows, maybe we can send it on to somebody else and let them put it on a spectrograph and see what it comes in at.
Right. So William and I were, like you mentioned, Ground Zero. That's the name that we have for one of our research areas, and which is a amazing place. And it's like the first time that you guys took me there. As soon as we entered that area, you could just feel it's a charged area.
Mm-hmm.
It is unlike any area that I've ever seen before, ever witnessed before. You can tell there's activity there just as soon as you're entering that location. So William and I went up to Ground Zero for the eclipse, and our goal was to try to gauge the activity of the Sasquatch before, during, and after the eclipse took place. It was a very unique opportunity, very unique window that we had as a team to be able to gauge that activity. So William, why don't you talk a little bit about our experience that we had there yesterday?
Well, as Daniel said, our main problem, or not problem, but main objective that we had to go up there was to see if an event like the eclipse would affect the Bigfoot. Again, there's no doubt that we have the Bigfoot there. We got many, many pictures, many, many experiences through there, and to see if it would affect them and to the point where it would visualize itself to us, or whether we would have to hear it, just through audio, or just kind of get a feel of it, because eclipse is not something we have every day. Now, something as someone who's been a UPS driver and someone who does a lot of outdoor activities, I realized that the solar part right there with the sun and the moon has a whole lot to do with the effect of the animals. It has a lot to do with the effect of people. You're going to have, as a UPS driver, more of the accidents that people have tends to be during the effects of a new moon and a full moon. So there's definitely a factor that goes in right there. And so that was our major purpose right there. Again, we took my wife as well, because generally when we have a lady with us, or sometimes have a child with us, the Bigfoot will tend to be more active and more letting themselves be either seen or heard. And so we took her with us. As Stephen said, man, it was just beautiful. I've seen some partial eclipses, but to see the first one I've ever saw where it was totally blacked out. Man, it was incredible for me. Like I said, I'm a religious man. I'm a Christian and Bible believer, and I believe, like I said, it actually deepened my faith if you could do that, to know that God set things in purpose there so that we could actually time these events, that to be able to sit there and watch the eclipse so that other people can be there from around the world, go to different places and see this. So it was really something other that, I said, it touched me as well. And I said, we kept in touch with Stephen there as well while he was there. And it was just a thing that you experience in your life. And it's something that you just don't ever forget. And I don't ever expect to forget that. So really, really had a great experience right there. And I think there's another in maybe 33 years or something, another like that. I'll never make that, but being 64 years old. But if I am, I'll be out there in my wheelchair and watching the next one.
It was very unique when that darkness came over the land. And the first thing I noticed was that the temperature dropped.
Yes.
The temperature dropped. And why don't you tell them about some of the things that we did out there, the calls and responses and stuff?
Our area at Ground Zero, it's an area Steve and I found together. He had actually had experiences there, and I'd actually had an experience there on the way one time right there in front. So as we were going researching one night, we had to make a change in our plans due to an illness in Stephen's family. We both said, well, hey, I know a place real close here. Stephen says, yeah, I know a place here close. Coincidentally, we're going to the same area. So I know Stephen's a very smart man, very, very smart man. And I knew right then it was going to be something special. And sure enough, that night we go in there and we actually get to see 3 Bigfoot walking across this clear cut. It looks to be an adult and 2 juveniles. And so, whereas they don't do any audio as far as talking with us, like I said, you could see how the juveniles were interacting with each other. You could see mama and watch those eyes blink. And man, that was just awesome because the eyes are probably 8 inches apart. And you could see whenever I went to knock on a tree where mama got mad at me and her eyes actually changed color like a mood ring. And then a little bit later on, then the little juveniles, or whatever you want to call them, that she has out there with us, they start acting up and her eyes just change color towards them. So to see this, actually experience this as they change the color. But this ground zero is just a very, very unique area. As soon as Stephen and I get there, I generally try, and so does he, to make some kind of call that maybe these creatures can identify us with. I believe in all my heart that they do recognize Stephen and I, even with our vehicles, even with our body shapes and builds and things that way. And so we do make a little call just to let them know. And generally when we do something like that, we generally tend to have some kind of activity. We've got there right now while we're sitting here in front of this camera, we've got about 10 cameras sitting out right there waiting to see what else can happen to us. And most of the time they do not disappoint us, but it's just truly, I believe, and I'm not just saying that, it's nothing, I don't own the land, it's public land, but it's a place that Steve and I were lucky enough to find that I believe is probably the most active area in all of America. Rarely do we ever go and not have some kind of activity.
Yeah. And during the eclipse yesterday, you were trying out some calls.
Yep. I generally, when I go in there, my main call is going to be a barred owl call. And I take a little megaphone about like this. You take the mechanical tone out of my voice. And I was working with doing my barred owl call and with this megaphone. And although I couldn't tell for sure, I know we had at least one response. It wasn't a real long response, almost like he just couldn't keep from answering, and then it quit. But we're sitting there and we're listening again. When I get through with this little megaphone, I put it up to my ear, almost like what they call an old ear trumpet. You see the old man sitting in his rocker with, and to listen to it through that. And so while we didn't get very much more in the audio like that, because we were talking to, and the road is gravel, and when you're walking, your sounds would tend to be muted out some. But we're here in this area right there. And while at first we might have doubted ourselves, well, we're not going to get any activity at all of a sudden, whenever we did, as you said, the temperature drop, and then how quickly that the light left our area. And then just as soon as the light started coming back, how the animals started reacting, not necessarily the Bigfoot, but the other animals too. When the light went totally away, the animals got just totally quiet. There was no animal activity, no sounds whatsoever. But then just as soon as it started coming back, the animals started going, the birds started going. But strangely, almost like if you read about it in Exodus in the Bible, we had the plague of the flies. We had more flies than you could shake a stick at.
Right.
And we questioned that amongst ourselves, man, where did all these flies come from? And evidently they just took it as, hey, this is the dawn of a new day. Let's get everything done. So very, very interested in being that way. And it's something that I wouldn't take for. And I know Stephen said they had some.
Yeah. The funny thing, there was I guess it was just a town dog was at the park, and the dog fell asleep whenever we reached totality. And we were looking at the dog. We were wondering, did the dog die? Did it have a heart attack or something? And we had to go wake it up. I mean, he was just out of it. And that happened when it went completely dark. It was pretty neat.
Yeah. Matt Slater.
Yep.
Out in Quincy, Washington. Sorry you missed it, man.
Oh yeah, it was a little bit cloudy here yesterday, and even if it was a clear sky, we only got about 20%, and it was just a little sliver right up there on the sun.
Yeah, it was just such a unique experience to be out there in the research area during that time period. And for me, in addition to the darkness, obviously, and the temperature drop was really prevalent to me. And but also about that research area, one of the first things that you guys taught me about was learning the sounds of your research area.
Mm-hmm.
And so we encourage learn the sounds of the wildlife, things that I thought were a Sasquatch. You guys were like, no, that's a fox.
Yeah.
And so listening to the sounds of that area as the eclipse took place and the landscape changed was really interesting. And then, like we pointed out, the flies, for some reason, when that sun came out, it was like the plagues of Egypt and the flies appeared. And I mean, it was when I'm saying the flies appeared, it wasn't just a few. I mean, it was swarms
Wow.
of flies. And then we talked to some people today who were in a different area, and they experienced the same thing with the flies.
Really?
They were in Clarksville, Texas, and they experienced the same thing with the flies the very same time. Just as soon as the sun started coming back out from behind the ecliptic moon there, all of a sudden, then the flies just started coming out. And they remarked about it too. I mean, because there's so many coincidences, but that shows that there's a commonality in these animals in the way that they that they respond. And it was so good because we went probably 8 to 10 miles into the woods. We were probably about 2 to 3 miles from anybody who came in at that time. So we were by ourselves to get away from somebody showing out or from screaming kids. And don't mean that ugly. I love kids, but from something that might distract from the animals that we're trying to restore. I know it's probably a benefit for Stephen as well, not having even though you wanted more people there at the but to have that right there and have the quietness and the solitude, and so that you could actually kind of accomplish what you were wanting to accomplish. So again, man, it was an experience I would not trade for. We all had a good time, lots of good cool water and Mountain Dew and laughs to go all around. So,
that's the other thing, Daniel. You'll definitely have to watch the video. I did record about 9 minutes of the eclipse, and I recorded it once it reached totality. And the kids that were there in the park, the way that they screamed out and carried on, it made it even better for me. I know that y'all had a really great moment out there, in Ground Zero, but it was also a good experience for us being around other people as well.
Oh, of course.
And also the other thing with the audio recorder, once it did reach totality, you can tell the difference on the audio.
Yeah. Another thing that we did out there was we launched the drone. I know we've kind of the last time we kind of introduced drones into our research, and Charlie's trying to break new ground in some way for us. So we launched the drone, and we had it hovering up there and recording the landscape light change. So that was pretty neat. I don't know if I sent you that video yet, but
no, not yet.
Okay.
Haven't viewed it yet.
Okay. Yeah, you definitely have to take a look at that. So, and we've introduced drones into our research and scanning that landscape of Ground Zero too. And we'll talk a little bit more about Ground Zero later, but it is just I can't stress enough. It's just such a unique area. But and experiencing the eclipse in that location was truly something special.
Right.
And I know, William, you did a couple of calls, and we did hear at least one response.
Exactly, and it was a response. And there's no doubt, because I've got my ears trained to that, like somebody does one of those little triangles when it's time for supper. Like when you call your dogs and bang them on the side of the pan. As soon as I heard that, I said, "There's a response right there." And of course, we don't all have the same amount of hearing or the same acuteness here, but there was no doubt. You heard it and I heard it. And so my wife, I think she was probably fidgeting with her camera, or else her glass, and didn't get to hear it at all, but still it happened. And so I was excited about that right there. It doesn't take a whole lot when you're around a creature that's not supposed to exist, but it does. And when you're able to communicate with it in some way where at least acknowledge that your existence out there. So again, man, it's the most fun thing that I've ever done, and that eclipse really intensified that. And to be up there where we were, very great area. It's upper towards the when we got there, it was kind of cloudy, and we thought, oh shucks, man, we're going to miss this. We planned for this for 5 months, 6 months, something like this. And all of a sudden, when we got there and we got kind of on top of that mountain, the haze went away, and it was just you could see everything that you wanted to see. So I couldn't ask for anything better, for what we planned for and what we actually got. Again, I trust Stephen immaculately as one of my research partners. And I knew that him being downtown with the people, if anything happened, we could count on him, let us know.
Of course.
And his firsthand accounts are second to nobody. I mean, absolutely nobody. And so to have us all three have that area covered, I think it was something that was worth it all to us all. It's something we won't ever forget, for sure.
Right.
Yeah. So Matt, being out there on the West Coast and not being able to be here with us and experience it, how are you thinking that the eclipse might affect the activity of Sasquatch and other cryptids in that area?
I honestly don't think it would have done much for the activity out here because there was almost no effect from the eclipse. This is not even noticeable, honestly. It is just a very small sliver of the moon passed in front of the sun up here, and it was just like maybe like a cloud going over. It was so fast and just barely noticeable. I really don't think it would have done much out here. Just so little of an effect. And a lot of the state as well at the time was pretty cloudy. Like once you get away from eastern Washington, heading more towards the west side, the clouds just pile up on the mountains. So probably wasn't even able to see anything. If it would have had an effect, they wouldn't have been able to see anything anyways.
Sure.
Yeah, it's just a artifact of, I guess, geography. It's like the random chance of where that path of totality went across is just too far away from here.
Yeah, and the reason I'm asking is because as researchers, we all know that atmospheric conditions, weather patterns, weather conditions all channel into what types of activity you may or may not see.
Sure.
Yeah,
During
absolutely.
that time period. So yeah, great experience and definitely memorable. So William, you've got some things coming up, particularly a brand new documentary that's coming up. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that, and then we'll take a look at the trailer.
I was very fortunate to be asked to participate in this trailer from a group called TEXLA, TEXLA, Texas Louisiana Research. And I've been around a lot of groups before, that come down around here. And sometimes you think, well, do they know what they're doing? Sometimes you see some that don't. Some of them it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a different skill level. But these guys were just amazing. They have built their own equipment. They had their own parabolic dish. They had microphones coming in from each side, and it could tell you on there with a little light what side the sound was coming in from. Also, they had built their own camera. And so what they had, plus the knowledge that they had from being in the woods, they weren't just somebody who watched something on TV, then went out and reported. They spent a lot of time in the woods. That night, they ended up going into the woods, and they had just a whole lot of activity. They had one, they said, inside their wood line, probably about 15 to 20 yards. It just circled them for just about the whole time. And again, like I said, these are experiences. They're not people who are out there that have their imaginations running with them or running wild with it. It's something that they have experienced before. And when they reported their activity to me, man, I couldn't have been any happier for them. But again, to be able to participate in this, and so graciously, they were just on top. The next day, they had me a copy of the trailer that we had done. There's several people around here who have Bigfoot experience. This is Arkansas. This is home of the Fountain Monster. It's, in my opinion, it's actually the mecca of Bigfooting. It's not California. It's actually had sightings of the Fountain Monster since 1908, whereas the Patterson-Gilman film, as great as it is, was 1967. So it's not like this is something new to us. But to be down here in this area right here, and for the research that these folks did, and that night, the next day, I get a text from them, assuring, hey man, here's the starting trailer for this movie, and it's actually a documentary, and it's going to be outstanding. I really believe that. I get excited about all Bigfoot things because, again, it's my hobby, especially something that was real. But this is going to be really good. Very excited to participate in it. They've got some more shooting to do. And again, they're men with a lot of Bigfoot experience. So they've got the technical experience. They actually had their wives with them, and just like I do mine. I take my wife. Stephen takes his wife as well. Well, the thing about ladies, you ladies are just so much more observant than us men as a rule. And you can remember what you happened and where it happened at. So again, very, very blessed to have a spouse who goes with us out there to the woods. And these guys were the same way. And they went, the ladies weren't scared. They weren't screaming or anything. Just very, very professional in there and the way they did things too. And so they filmed this little trailer here. And it's going to be something I think that's really going to get a lot of people's attention. If you don't see it and watch this when it comes out, I think you're really going to be missing. And like I said, I've been doing this for 47 years. And for 47 years, you ebb and flow with this. But this is something that I'm really sky high about. And to have this documentary is going to be coming out. And like I said, even though my part in it is going to be very, very small, some of the people besides myself, they've got in their research and telling about are some people that are just as credible as anybody you ever want to meet. So very, very excited about it.
Yeah, there's a lot of documentaries out there, and And I know that if you're getting involved in this project, then it's the real deal.
It really is. I'm very, about every, you see a lot of shows out there and they come out and they always tend to mention a family's name from down here who's one of us three's great friends, the Crabtree family. But like I said, they've never met the Crabtrees from Adam. Well, Keith is one of our research partners. Right? We were with Keith down there Saturday. He played the creature in the Falcon Monster movie. He drove the car when it's swerving around. He's been a Falcon lifelong resident. He's been down there with his Uncle Smokey, who wrote the first Bigfoot book ever about the Falcon Monster down there. And so with him down there with us and these documentaries, but I think he's going to be excited about this as well. So it's something that's going to be worth something looking to. It's not going to be something where anything is silly or they embarrass anybody. I say they were way too professional for that. And to see the level that they looked at it not as a job, but that this is my opportunity to bring to you this information. It's going to be something that's going to enrich your life. And it did mine. So again, I'm very, very excited about it. I think we're all going to be excited about it.
Oh, yeah.
All right, let's take a look at that trailer.
You know, that's a scary thing. You're looking at something that's not supposed to exist, but he does. He's hidden himself since the beginning of time, hadn't been classified by, quote, science, but yet Bigfoot is real, especially here in the park and size.
It don't mean it's no monster, that's not what I'm saying. But it don't mean it's not either.
All right. Awesome. This looks like it's going to be fantastic.
Amazing.
Yes.
It's going to be good. I can't help but even smile right now just because the way they put that sizzle or trailer, where you want to call it, the way they put that together, it tends to get you when you do what Stephen and Daniel and I do for it's more than a hobby. Actually, it's kind of a way of life or a sidelight, but for that right there and to see how well we think that's going to go, it's really, really exciting. It's going to bring y'all some new information too, because these guys, I said, they weren't just sitting there just hearing it from TV or watching a show. And these dudes were in the woods that night until very, very late. And I drove down there first pay of the dish the next morning to see what had happened, and they told me, and they were all excited. And again, I was excited for them. So it's going to be really good. I think it's going to be something that adds a lot to everybody's research. It's going to be a lot that can add to the general public's knowledge of Bigfoot as a being as well.
Yeah, and when you know that the source of these documentaries are from people that are invested and people that care about the product that they're putting out there, we as researchers can learn from those. There's always something we can pluck out from it.
Mm-hmm.
So as we can see in the title, this documentary brings us back to what made this area famous in Sasquatch research, and that's the legend of Boggy Creek and the Falcon Monster. So let's talk a little bit about that for a few minutes.
Yeah. Let me say, these guys, thank you for letting us have the opportunity to debut this here.
Oh yes,
Wow.
that as well. This is a debut. I forgot.
I did not. I wouldn't. I told Daniel, I said, I can't share it with you till I talk to these fellas to make sure it's okay. I texted them. They said, yeah, man, do. And just let us know. So again, we're so fortunate to debut this here, right here on Cryptid Wilderness Research, which, some of my best friends are guys I spend a lot of time in the woods with. So thank you to them for as well as Texas Research. And I hope we've done your project justice, because we certainly put our whole heart into it too.
Yeah, certainly, Matt and I thank you for that opportunity to be able to debut it here. So thank you very much.
Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about the Falcon Monster. We were out at Boggy Creek just today. So that's what put Falcon on the map for cryptid research.
Yes.
So Stephen, let's start with you. You're from this area. Tell us about the first time you ever heard about the Falcon Monster.
The first time for me to hear about the Falcon Monster was probably from television. What used to happen was that people, as they would drive on Highway 71 from Shreveport to Texarkana, occasionally somebody would see something crossing the highway, and they would call in, they would report it, and some reporter would usually get tasked with that assignment to go interview the person who had seen the Falcon Monster. And you could tell most of the time the reporters weren't quite as enthused about that assignment as they were other assignments. But the thing that stuck out to me the most, I'm certain this was in the 80s, and it was probably on the 10 o'clock news, because they never showed that on the 6 o'clock news that I can remember. But the guy's eyes were still big when he was talking to the reporter. And I don't know if the reporter came from Texarkana or Shreveport, but it would have taken him a little while to get there. And the guy was still excited. He was just about beside himself after telling what he had seen across the highway. And so I was familiar with that. And I had worked in the Falk area a few times, and I was always looking, but I never did see anything that just convinced me that it was really real until I got hooked up with William. And since then, I've been able to see it. How many times? Quite a few times. And I know my daughter, she's not comfortable doing interviews or anything like that. But when she was 15 years old, she started going Bigfooting with me and William, and Reese was going with us quite a bit at that time. And she started in, what was it, about the third week of October?
Yep, third week of October.
Third week of October, she started going Bigfooting with us. And on December 21st, she had her first sighting.
Oh, wow.
And that was at Thornton's Wells. But it was on that particular weekend that we got the 3 in the field that William was talking about earlier. Then on Sunday night, we were down there close to the river. What was that? By Mercer number 2?
Mercer number 2 down by
Mercer number 2. We'd actually found a print in a gravel road, and the truck was parked on the next track. And we actually saw one through the FLIR at that spot. And then when we went to Thornton's Wells, my daughter saw one through the FLIR. I think William was actually able to see the outline of the creature, and with that, I asked her the following day, I said, I would like for you to go ahead and draw out what you saw. And I asked her, I said, if you would, just go to your room and draw it out. I didn't want to influence her. I didn't want her to draw what I wanted her to draw. I wanted her to draw what she saw. And the funniest thing about that was she drew William as a stick figure for size comparison.
6'2", 280 on a stick figure. I didn't know whether to kiss her or whether to buy her dinner or what. Nobody draws me as a stick figure, but she drew me as a stick figure. But the way she drew the creature.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's so similar to what you drew and what Dustin Clark drew. And she had never seen your drawing or Dustin's. And Dustin had never seen your drawing or Sid's drawing. So that's
and Dustin was not a rookie. Dustin was also doing podcasts at the time. He was a researcher, and he had been into the woods quite a bit. I don't remember whether he'd had a sighting or not, but he actually had one with Stephen and I. We took him down there to our good area. And coincident with that, the first night that Stephen and I really got together there in the Falk area, we came back there, and man, there was a storm like what we've experienced today. Well, we went down there, and as soon as we got down there to where this place was, down on the Mercer Bayou boat ramp down there, we've got 2 that come charging in from the woods, and they're whistling at each other. And man, me and Stephen are looking at each other like, this ain't this easy. This is either good or it's going to be bad. But it turned out to be good. So then we got to get Sid down there, his daughter, a couple weeks later. Stephen and Reese actually saw a creature on the boat ramp there, and possibly 2 to 3 creatures there. I didn't get to see it, so I can't tell this. Yeah. But his daughter and I were walking down the road, and you can hear one charging us. And man, it got hairy for me, not just because you never know how it's going to happen for yourself, but also I'm in charge of making sure this little young lady stays safe. And that's what, if I take somebody with me, you're gonna get everything I've got to keep you safe. And I was going to. Well, all of a sudden, this thing, it sounds like he hits a tree and scrambles up this tree because you can't hear him anymore. Yeah. And I called her my good luck charm after that, because we've been out 3 times and had some kind of activity, all 3 times. And then she got to see the one there at Thornton's Well. I'm down there at the boat ramp, standing right by the water's edge. Steve and her kind of at the top of the boat ramp to where it makes a breakdown. So they had a little bit different vantage point than I did, but I'm down with the spotlight. And all of a sudden, Sid goes, William, here he comes, here he comes, here he comes. Well, I couldn't see him till finally he got around. It was a full moon night till finally got around the one tree, and I could see the silhouette come. I lit him up. He stepped behind the tree and started running away from me, keeping that tree between us the whole time, so I couldn't get a good look. But after that, we lost one of our best research partners, and that was because she told Dad.
Yeah, she told me, Dad, I want to wait a while before I see another one.
Yeah. So the movie The Legend of Boggy Creek came out in the early 70s, right? And it essentially took something that was regionally known and then made it nationally and even internationally known as the movie over the years has gone through its cycles and phases of exposure. So you guys being from this area, how would you say that movie influenced the culture of the region?
Well, being from Texarkana, one thing I wanted to say is I want to compliment the people of Falcon the way they handled this. Anytime you're a Bigfoot researcher, you take a lot of grief from people. Everybody talks about, well, you're just trying to get your 15 minutes of fame. The 15 minutes you get into those 15 minutes, 12 of them are derogatory. It's somebody making fun of you, saying that you're crazy. What were you drinking? What were you smoking? I don't drink or smoke. And wasn't high at any time during that time. And like I said, most of your 15 minutes of fame, most of that is derogatory. But they handled it with class. They would wake up in the morning, people would have cut their fence. They would be camping out in their pastures with their cows, and they're trying to get a look at the fountain monster. People were coming down with guns, and you didn't know if they were going to shoot through your window, shoot your kids, shoot your dogs, shoot your cows, or whatever. But they handled it with such class. Very, very impressed with them. Again, I had the fortune of being a UPS man later on to come to Falcon. They didn't talk about it much. I thought, man, I'm going to have all kinds of good stories to tell. It wasn't so for a long time until the folks finally got to know me. They're not sitting there trying to brag about it. They're not trying to make it to where it's something or that some kind of claim to fame for them. It's everyday life for them. And a lot of people that I finally talked to that finally opened up said, oh, yeah, said, we see him right along all the time, and said, he just looks at us and goes on. And so that was one of those things that was really, really, that really stressed on to me was the humble way they handled it. But it did handle the culture down here, because now when you go in, there's a little store called Monster Mart. You go in Monster Mart. We were in there today. Gosh, man, I think maybe 20 countries, people from 20 different countries, and nearly all the states of the United States have come in there. And he helps keep this thing alive. It's not just, well, he's promoting folklore. So folklore tends to resemble truth rather than truth resembling, folklore. Folklore is based on something that's been around. I said 1908, that was the first year that the ball fell from Times Square. That was when Henry Ford invented the Model T. You get 50 years before, then you got Abraham Lincoln as president. So again, you try to put that in that time, your perspective, and see just how long this has been going on, and it's still going on. So that's what makes it another interesting. Seen by everyday people. It's not these. There's some people who have come down here that have been lucky enough to have some kind of encounter, but to have the kind of sightings that what I've had 3, I think, this week that have come to me, called me, which I so appreciate. People call me and saying, "Hey, Will, if you're still doing Bigfoot, would you give me a holler, because this is happening to me. I've got some behind my house, some that are sitting there, one that's down there staying by my mailbox, some that are out here whistling every night." And so to get that, and that kind of gives me not only a leg up to see that they are still alive, which I know they are, no doubt about that, but what areas they are and what areas I need to research if we can. So I said, Steve and I have been down there. I trust Stephen with my life, and that's a true sense of the word, because when you're down there, things are not scripted. You don't know how they're going to go. I've actually had a couple of encounters that could have been violent, and with my wife and son actually one night, and me and my pit bull at the time. And but anyway, the way it is, so it's the way it's done. You never get anybody. I was standing in line where Daniel lives up there. We were on an Alaskan cruise. Somebody said, "Where are you from?" I said, "Arkansas." They said, "Arkansas." I said, "Texarkana." "Oh, how far is that from Falk?" And this is 4,000 miles away. When you tell them, you get a big smile on your face. Standing in line at Disney World, again, out there in Orlando, the same way. Just making conversation with somebody when you're trying to get the big, long, heated lines to go a little bit faster. They said, "Where are you from?" "Oh, I'm from Texarkana, Arkansas." Texarkana. "Oh, is that very close to Falk down there?" So it's something that people have heard of from that far away. Mm-hmm. It's not just regionally as well as affected, but it's also affected nationwide. So I'm honored to that, and I'm always honored to give them a description of what has happened to me, and that the fact that the animals or the animal or creature or being, however you want to refer to, is still here and still going strong. Babies, we've got babies, folks, that we see quite often. So
sure do.
Right. Looking at The Legend of Boggy Creek, and are there yearly events that take place surrounding that movie? And And what do they do locally? Any festivals? Any activities centered around the legend of Boggy Creek Fog Monster?
Well, our buddy Keith, he does a camp out twice a year. Usually has one in springtime, which will be coming up this weekend, and usually in late October, and somewhere around Halloween, where kids can dress up and people can pass out candy and everything like that, just having a fun event. So, and Keith, he is such a good friend of the county, and he's made donations to Smith Park and things like that. They think a lot of him. So it's always a good event. We never have had anything that's just really gotten stupid or anything at the event. It's just a lot of like-minded people with and good-hearted people.
And he actually played the monster
Yes.
in the movie.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So we'll be there this weekend, all three of us at Keith Crabtree's Fog Monster camp out. So if you're in the area, we encourage you to come down there. It starts this Friday, correct?
Yes.
Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
And it's free. The camping is free, except unless if you get an electric campsite, then you have to pay on the electricity on that. For the rest of the time, the camping is free. It doesn't cost you a penny.
Right.
Last year they had a tornado on the first day, and I thought, man, I'm just wasting my time coming down here. Everybody down there in that park had some kind of Bigfoot experience, whether they were Bigfoot hunters or not. And I was just blown away by that right there. I mean, people, like I said, that knew nothing about it or actually knew what the history of that was. And they said, man, we've had some rocks being thrown up here by our tent or things like that. We've heard some noises. So again, it was something that really, really, the way it transpired was just really, really awe-inspiring for people who've never had this, to see, like you said, the look on their face, see their eyes being big, and realizing, hey, there's something down here actually to this. So again, like I said, Stephen and I, first time down there. It's so it's going to be a lot of fun. There'll be some people there that are actually some of the Bigfoot researchers that you've seen on TV. They generally tend to drift in and out every now and then. Yeah. And so that makes it good as well if it's somebody that you've wanted to meet. But a lot of good information. The county provides us with sheriff's protection when we need it. Again, I'm friends with the game wardens and the sheriff. And so I've got a lot of them on my speed dial. Anything goes wrong, of course, there's a lot of men down there can handle it. It's kind of like the Darling said there about Ernest T. Bass. Said, well, we thought about killing him, just didn't want to go that far. These men could handle that if they needed to, but they actually give us protection for your kids, for our families, and that means a lot too, right there. It's not going to get out of hand, I promise you.
So because of the movie, the word monster has kind of been stamped on Sasquatch of this region. But what is the reality of the reputation of the behavior of the Sasquatch in this area?
For me personally, I've been scared. I'd be lying if I said I'd never have been scared. But as far as me experiencing an aggressive encounter, I've never experienced that. The fear has always been my reaction to whatever they've done. Whenever I didn't know they were in the area, and then all of a sudden they'll do something, and I get scared like a little kid, and it takes me several months to build my nerve up again.
Right.
And one of those experiences was at Carter Lake, down there one night, and I had done a call, and we had some coyotes answer back. There was one coyote that was separated from the rest of the pack, and I'm standing out there, and I'd kind of already got a feeling that, hey, you probably need to move closer to the vehicle, because looking from the parking lot, looking to Carter Lake, there's one big tree out there and a bunch of brush. And about the time I was thinking that, something takes off through the brush. Something really big takes off through the brush. And what scared me so bad was I didn't know whether it was coming towards me or going away from me. and that shook me. I guarantee you, I was rattled on that. But I mean, stuff like that is what gets me. Or you'll hear you'll think you're in the area alone, and when you're walking out, and you'll hear a tree limb get snapped. A green one makes a distinct sound when it gets snapped.
Yeah.
So.
And folks, Stephen is a big man. When Stephen walks into the woods, Bigfoot starts shaking. But for
Yeah.
Stephen to get that excited, and I wasn't there at that time. I had some other family responsibilities to get to go out late that night, and it was late. But when I heard that story, man, you couldn't help but laugh. But this Carter Lake, like I said, the big tree he's talking about, that tree is no 100 years old. Some of it is sometimes cypress trees. Sometimes you got some oak trees there, but they're all either 100 or more years old. And they'll tell them what they've seen. I wish we could hear some of the stories that they could tell. But what we also know is that the Bigfoot through there will actually grab an alligator and kill one of those alligators and have a big, nice gator tail supper. Mm-hmm. So it's a very, very wild area. And you don't go down there without hearing the gators growling. You don't go down there without hearing the hoot owls in the daytime, not just, at nighttime. And then again, getting that unexpected noise that you didn't know was there, and where he's like, fooled you. I've been hearing it all the time. So
have you guys heard a lot of reports about aggressive Sasquatch in this area, or not so much?
Well, I've had two aggressive encounters. They were aggressive. I was fortunate enough to do a show with Travel Channel this last about 2 years ago, and a lot of it was based on the fact that it chronicled my first encounter with Bigfoot, which wasn't aggressive because the thing was, I'm going to say it could have even been ill, but he postured towards me like, don't come down here, stay away from me. And he didn't have to worry about that because I did. I stayed away. I couldn't even move for the longest. And finally I ran when I finally got my wits about me. But the second one that was on this show right here was on the Travel Channel show, which is called This Is How I'm Going to Die, which is what I thought. This was very, very different. I had my wife and my son down there with me. And my son and I had been having discourse with this Bigfoot since December the 9th of that year. And he would actually get in there. He would holler with us. We could do the calls. He would call back. And so then again, on December 21st of that year, we did the same thing. We had him down there. He would call with us and he would call back. And so this is actually then the next year, Easter Sunday, 2014, my son being in dental school, wanted us all to go down there as a family because he enjoyed it, as I did too. And so he asked my wife to go, and usually she, being the mother's work is never done at the home, especially with guys like me and Reese, because we could make a mess or two to be cleaned up. But she says, yeah, I'll go with you. So we do. But when you drove into these woods, it's just like you talked about ground zero. When you went into these woods were electrically charged that night. Sasquatch can actually have what's called infrasound. Mm-hmm. And there was a feeling in these woods, like I said, something is fixing to happen. And to add to that mystique was there was just a full moon, but then the clouds were blowing over just enough at just the right speed that this scene could have appeared on any monster movie that's ever been made since they first started doing film. And so I had that feeling. And so when I did, we went down there and I actually backed my vehicle up facing outwards just in case, because I did have that feeling that strong. Left my keys in there, and boy, that upset my family. Oh yeah, every time you open that door, it's going to beep, 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 and it's going to upset we're not going to see anything. Well, it wasn't that way. And so anyway, long story short, this thing starts charging in on me and my wife and my son. And you could hear him when he was coming, and it sounded, the sound that the feet made when he hit the ground was actually a rumbling sound. Your clothes would actually vibrate. My wife heard it, my son heard it, and here he comes. And so I'm sitting there waiting on him with a spotlight and a pistol. And I don't want to shoot these things. I'm not a pro-kill researcher, but I'm also not him being a pro-kill Will Bigfoot either. So, but with my wife and my son being there, he comes in. When I finally see his shadow, I hit him with the spotlight. They don't like light. They hate light. And man, he just kind of brightens that arms up and just turns over, runs away on all fours for about 10 to 15 feet, stands back up, and then runs to the woods. Again, gets in a tree, not too far from where me and Sid had our experience down there. And so gets in a tree. We're sitting there listening to him, and I think, oh, man, he thinks my son is the weak link. So I go get between him and them. Then we hear another one over there, that's, whoa, whoa, almost like a barking noise. He takes off running. Then the one that's barking takes off. Well, then it gets deathly quiet. And so whenever it does, we're sitting there, and my wife asks for a pistol. My son hands her a flashlight. She goes, what's this supposed to do? He said, they're more afraid of that. She goes, well, I'm not. You give me the pistol. So he gives her the pistol. As we're sitting there, and she says, if you guys, because it gets deathly quiet. When I say tune quiet, I mean, it's like the inside of a casket. I mean, it's quiet. We don't have any peeper frogs. We don't have any birds. We have nothing. And it's that quiet. She goes, you hear that? And I said, what? And she goes, nothing. I said, Yeah. She goes, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And so she says, if you guys hear this truck start, you better jump into the back because I'm gone. And I looked at my wife, and my son's just fixing to finish dental school, become a dentist. There's no chance of any other doctor ever coming from my loins first, ever, you know. And I'm sitting there, and I said, so you mean to tell me that you're going to leave your son and husband down here with a rogue Bigfoot? And she goes, I'll have more kids. If you hear the truck start, just listen to me, jump into the back because I'm gone. So it was that kind of experience. And she wasn't a believer at the time. Well, now she knows that there's something down there that's going to be, that can be really, really. And sure enough, the sister and her sister-in-law calls. Hi, sister. How are you? Oh, I'm doing good, I guess. Where are you at? Well, I'm down here in the Bigfoot woods with William and Reese. Y'all have any activity? Yeah, we are. And she goes, you know you're going to die. Well,
Yeah.
that really helped a lot.
Yeah. So, you know, the reputation, regional reputation of cryptid behavior is always something as a researcher always interests us. You know, Matt, out on the West Coast, I want to bring you into this discussion. So, out on the West Coast, in your area, what kind of reputation does Sasquatch have out there as far as aggression and all that good stuff? What have you heard?
Well, like you're saying, I only have anecdotal stuff from what I've heard from other stories. Most of the encounters out here that I've heard of are generally peaceful, non-violent, non-aggressive interactions. There have been a few famous ones. For example, the 911 call that happened out on the Olympic Peninsula, where a man's dog was sadly killed. Couple of scenarios along those lines. Most of the time out here, though, it's they're generally peaceful encounters. Just distant sightings. Maybe some stones being thrown at each other. Being thrown at the people. But not really anything that I've heard of where folks have been charged or seriously assaulted. Now, that setting that aside, there is, of course, the very well-known Ape Canyon incident, which happened here pretty much in a straight line, only about 90 miles from where I'm at now. And, of course, that was an extremely violent encounter. It happened many, many years ago, but it was extremely violent, involving multiple Sasquatch and multiple people. That cabin essentially being completely destroyed. All the people inside it survived, but when people have gone back there soon after that event, they found that the cabin itself was quite well destroyed, with large rocks being thrown through the roofs, Sasquatch breaking in through the walls. There were gunshots fired, stones thrown, all that kind of stuff. If people can read up on the Ape Canyon incident. So it's out here. It could be seen as kind of on a balance, mostly peaceful, sometimes violent. It seems to me that that's how it usually goes out here.
So, in the stories that you've heard from this part of the country, and hearing our partners out here talk about their experiences, what do you find interesting about, especially the Arkansas Sasquatch, Sulphur River, Boggy Creek? What kind of things do you find interesting about these stories from this part of the country?
Well, the thing that stands out to me the most is from a lot of the shows and information that I've listened to and read. Most of the encounters tended to be more towards the aggressive side, down in the south. But now that I've met Will, and I've heard the stories and stuff told by Will about his encounters, and some of the stuff from Steven, like firsthand information from well-respected researchers in the area, that it's not like that. They're not violent. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. But I think that depends on the individual creature, not necessarily the area that they're in. Because they're like people. They're individuals.
Right.
And they could be greatly influenced by their environment, by their surroundings. Their past encounters with human beings may not have been positive, and it's just like people. If they have a negative experience somewhere, they're going to be more guarded when that experience happens again. So if a Sasquatch is out there and he's already had negative experience, like say he got shot at by a hunter, the next time he sees a person out there, it's not going to be a good time for them.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah.
I think the interactions and the overall attitudes, I think that probably needs to be put on a lower shelf, and the more focus on individuals in the population. That idea needs to come forward more.
Again, with that being said, you never want to throw caution to the wind and just run up to them like you've got a teddy bear out there you're fixing to go get a hug from. It's not going to happen. I had another.
They are.
Yep, I have my pit bull with me, and he got after me and my pit bull, and it got very, very serious. And I had found the track, was there to cast the track the next day, and it got very, very serious for me and my pit bull. And she was intent on protecting me. She was so nervous, she was just running back and forth across the road. I had guns with me as well, and I was bound determined he was not going to get my dog. And so when we finally got away, whenever I got close to my vehicle, I hit the fob on the button on my fob that does the horn, and the horn started honking. And I think it threw him off for whatever he had plans to do, because he had been screaming. And I'm not talking about just screaming. And so when we got there, I got back, was able to open my truck door. She jumped up into my seat, but over my seat and console, never hit until she got in her seat herself. And then she got down and just started shaking. And this dog was afraid of anything, like I said, and she was loving, protective. The encounter from the Fountain Monster, the man named Bobby Ford, man, this thing got him whenever he was going back to check on his lady friends. I think there were 2 from the accounts that I've read. And I know that there is multiple Bigfoot, Sasquatches, whatever this thing was down here. And so it went back. He went back to get the ladies. It jumped on him. Man, he had to be almost Superman, because he fought his way away and crashed through the door. Right. But according to what the ladies said, that it was actually a deal of a territory thing. They were trying to live there at the house or under the house. This family had just moved in. But number 2, the lady wrote a letter to the Texarkana Gazette and said it seemed to be after my dog. For every time that the dog went into a different room, the Bigfoot would appear at this window right here trying to get through. So, some of those different scenarios that can happen for people that can actually escalate a very normal situation into a situation that you're not quite prepared for.
Yeah. It's well, Daniel, the probably the most aggressive encounters that I know of actually occurred in Oklahoma, and I know one of the men who went through that, and the report is, that they actually killed one, and a larger one. Said what the man told me. He said whenever it happened, it sounded like the zoo just erupted out there when his brother shot it. A larger one came by and picked it up, carried it off into the woods. And he said the situation got a lot worse for them. And what he told me that finally brought it all kind of to an end, or somehow made peace, is said if you will ignore them, they'll leave you alone. As long as they're getting your attention with something, they're gonna keep on going. And so that was a firsthand account that was told to me. And also probably the more aggressive, another aggressive area was out in here in East Texas around Bryan's Mill. What is that lake there, William?
Thomas Lake down there.
Thomas Lake, yeah, Thomas Lake. And down there, what I've been told was you actually had 2 clans down there around Thomas Lake, and they didn't get along. So he said that he used to go in there and go camping and stuff and take other researchers in there. And he's told me here recently, within the past year or 2, he said, I don't know if my heart could take it to go do that again, because they absolutely did not get along. So,
and they don't, man. It's just like, all the Native American clans didn't get along. Dog clans don't get along. And these things, the clan, they're almost familial in the way that they have the ones that are in their clan. It's either some that have been members of their family, some that whether you have a male and a female and babies that have been hatched from that group, so to speak, or then it's something been adopted into the group. But they're very possessive of each other, very protective of each other. And so when you get, like the joke goes, you mess with me, you mess with my whole family.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same way the Bigfoot is. And then that's true. And again, we've been very fortunate that the incidents that we've had that have been aggressive have been able to be toned down quite a bit. Although we've had the screams at us, man, lots of times you get rocks thrown at you, you get trees thrown at you, pine cones, you get stomping, you get growls. But what
the stomping gives me chills.
The stomping goes good because I'm picturing my head underneath that foot right as it lands right there on the ground. But it's one of those things that but I think it's just way, rather than it getting violent, their way of saying, hey, you need to get out of here. This is my territory. Either I've got babies here, and we've been seeing babies every year for since 2019, and seeing them as early as December and January.
Yeah.
So evidently they have a different timeline here for having their infants. And so when the baby's there, it's just like it is with anybody around here. That tends to make things different. And you don't want the dogs chasing your babies. You don't want the people chasing your babies. You certainly don't want them shooting at the babies or shooting at them. So that can tend to escalate. I carry a gun with me. They recognize me with a gun. Daniel got a picture of one last year when he and I were down there. We're going down a hill. We hear Bigfoot over here. Daniel had been treed by a couple of hogs that morning at a different location. So we're back. We hear the Bigfoot over there cracking the branches. We hear what's called a little bit of jibber jabber, or what do you want? You can call it for the babies. And so as we're sitting there, and I've got a 45-70, and I'm looking over here trying to protect Daniel and I, because we also have a bear up there. And I'm not a big fan of bears. And he's going to know that if he comes try to get too close. But sure enough, as we're sitting there and I'm looking over to the right, Daniel's taking pictures. He's behind me. And like I said, I've got the gun. So anyway, as we're waiting, I said, Daniel, go ahead and send me some of them pictures. We'll see what you got. And man, standing right in front of me 40 yards is a Bigfoot behind a tree, leaning out, looking at me. I never saw this Bigfoot because I was so intent on seeing what we were seeing over there. It was making the gibberish noise and everything else like that. But as a rule, like I said, I think that's a way of it keeping from becoming very aggressive than it actually exploding. Because if they want to get aggressive, everything that they tend to hunt and eat when they do their own hunting is something that can hurt them back, so they tend to have to be protected. But on that right there, so thankful for all the encounters Steve and I have had together. Stephen had one night, there was a white one over there. Got him kind of upset. He called me. I was just coming out of church, and he goes, "Where are you?" And I told him. He goes, "You're not up here." I said, "No." Well, man, that got his attention. So, but again, very fortunate. We're here to tell you about it and to share with it, not to try to drum up fear, to drum up respect naturally, but to drum up, the fact that these things live here. There's too many. If only one person out there is telling the truth, and take away me and Stephen and Daniel, then they're here. And the odds of that all being lies is just slim and none. So they are here. Other people are seeing them on it. I talked to a man not an hour ago. He's got them on his property, and I can't wait to get down there. And one of them tends to be a big male. He said about a 10-foot male, and said he's kind of got a little bit of attitude. So I'm sure we're going to have to go through some negotiations before we get there.
Right.
But when we do, it's going to be a lot of fun. I think it's going to be certainly something that you keep your wits and you keep your senses about you tuned as fine as what they can be. But again, that's the thing. It's not adrenaline junkie. It's to prove that these things are here and to see what they do, so we can share with any.
Yeah, in that particular area that you're talking about, I mean, that's the thing in August and September. Whenever it's hot and dry, they're still in that area. And that's the thing I've always told you ever since from the first time we went in the area until now. I always thought there was something different about those. They seemed a little bit different from the ones in Falk, the ones at Ground Zero, the ones in Oklahoma even. There's something different about them. And of course, I mean, that one track that you found that looks like a what a gorilla's foot or something?
It looks like a gorilla foot. Folks, it's a gorilla foot. That's what it is. There's no doubt about it. It's almost 20 inches long. You see the big toe being splayed out like this right here. Then you see the other three toes like this here. Yeah. And me and Stephen spent 30 minutes down there one night having a knocking contest with one of those. Yeah. And then me and my son came back later on, and there's one that's in the water, and you can see the water flowing the other way. And so I said, Rich, it's a Bigfoot. I go to get in the truck and go park out of the way so in case we need to leave. And sure enough, the thing runs up the bank. You can hear him, but then I do a couple of calls. And Rich goes, well, they're not going to call at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
They will.
Yeah, they were calling. Not only they were calling names like you need to get out of here.
Yeah.
So
They'll call. They'll do vocals during the daytime. They will do tree knocks during the daytime. It's a totally different thing down there.
So you've chronicled some of these observed behaviors in your book. You have a book out, Searching for the Unfindable, My Quest for the Arkansas Bigfoot.
Yep.
For those of you interested in Sasquatch research, we highly encourage you to pick up William Lunsford's book. It's available on Amazon and Lulu Books, I believe. It's goes into very, very well detailed accounts, and it's got history, it's got humor, it's got character. It's unlike any research or book that I've ever read before. And I'm not just saying that because he's my partner, but it's a really good window into personal experience and how his life was changed by his first experience. So we highly encourage you to pick that up and give it a read. It's a good read. So let's move into our research area at Ground Zero. So our team got a photograph not that long ago. And one of the things that we do is grid photos. Now you'll find people out there that say, don't do grid photos, blah, blah, blah. But so we were coming out of the woods one day towards the logging road, and we started taking grid photos because we figured if there's something watching us on our departure, they're probably in the tree line.
Right.
This is how this photo got captured. So we started just grid lining photos all across that tree line. And when we got up to the road, that's when we start examining the photo. So we're still on site. Now, what we're looking for, obviously, is any type of anomalies that appear in the foliage and in the landscape. Any type of anomalies, really scanning that landscape.
Mm-hmm.
And then once we find the anomalies, focus in on that and go through our process of eliminations. And one of the things about us as a team is that we don't just think every twig snap that we hear in the research area and every picture that we get of a blob squatch is actually a Sasquatch. We go through a process of elimination. Is it natural phenomenon? Is it the wind? Blah, blah. I mean, we go through a list. We don't just automatically do what other researchers do and say, oh, that's a Sasquatch. That's a Sasquatch. So as we're taking these grid photos, we get a photo that looks like a tree in the distance that breaks into two separate branches. But in examining it for anomalies, we notice that there's what looks to be a face in the middle of it watching us. So let's take a look at that first photo of the distance photo. And here we are of the distance photo right there. And you're seeing the photo as we saw it on the road up there, and this was just one of many across that tree line. So we're looking at the white branches where they break, and right in the middle of that, as we're going to see in the next photo, which is the close-up, right in the middle of that is what appears to be a face. What I'm seeing in this is a brow ridge. I'm seeing, facial structure, eyes, nose, possible mouth. So one of the things that we did when we noticed this is while we were on site, we sent this photograph up to Anchorage to a professional photographer up there. And so they could examine it and add filters to it and do all the techie stuff that they do. I'm not a techie, so I'm just like, just do whatever it is you do to thoroughly examine this photograph. They said whatever is there is not disappearing with our analysis. So, and they were actually able to also do some body outlines, and other people have examined the photo and are actually seeing more than I saw in the initial one. This is from Ground Zero. This is from our main research area. And it's also an area that there are a lot of tracks around. And again, going back to what I said earlier about Ground Zero, it is an area that is charged. It's an area with a lot of activity. And Stephen, why don't you talk a little bit about Ground Zero and what your thoughts are on this photograph, and talk about some of your memorable experiences in Ground Zero, and then we'll get to William.
Right.
And let's hear about some of yours as well.
Yeah, with a photo there, I know you sent it off. You sent it to somebody really well known, and they were really interested in the photo as well. Yeah, that's one of many photos that have come out of the area. And we had there's 3 toed tracks, there's 4 toed tracks, 5 toed tracks in the area. We have multiple pictures of them with babies. There are some, I don't know whether to call them really interesting things or just odd things at Ground Zero. We've had game cameras that quit working. We've had game cameras that have been destroyed.
Yeah.
And there was one time I had set out a camera, which was my newest camera at the time. I put brand new batteries in it, a brand new SD card in it, and I left it out there for 2 or 3 months. And I never got the first photo. Not a rabbit, not a deer, a coyote, absolutely nothing. And that's just farther down the ridge from where the candy store was. And I don't know exactly how all this works with the ground energy, ley lines, and everything else, but I know that there's a lot of iron ore in that area. And I know that another researcher from Texas has told me that one of his hot spots, it was an area that had a lot of iron ore in it. And I know in other parts of the countries, crystals are something that seemed to attract them. So I don't know. This maybe by the way they go barefooted all the time, they're able to feel the energy or something. I don't know. There's so much I don't know.
Right. And one of the things that you specialize in Ground Zero and other research areas as well is the audio part, is getting those sound recordings to be analyzed. And a lot of researchers don't do that. Yeah. But in my opinion, that's a very vital part of thorough cryptid research.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about your audio operation.
Well, as William was talking earlier about being down there at the dead end road when that one came running in on us, we had been in that area for 29 minutes and 30 or 40 seconds, according to the timestamp on the audio, when you could actually hear it running in, and then the sound just stops. That was really, really cool.
So you put, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. It's just like the area that we call the dark woods, where we're talking about where the guy's having really aggressive encounters. I remember the first time at the pipeline, we took you to the pipeline.
Right.
That night. And that's where I dropped the audio recorder off. And I remember the first time I played that audio for my wife, she got chill bumps because we know that there are coyotes and other stuff in it, but it sounds like the gates of Hades are opening up out there.
Right. And that takes a lot of time for you to analyze these audio recordings. I mean, hours and hours and hours for what may be one moment of cryptid activity.
Yeah. For 9 hours of audio on that particular time there, I got 2 tree knocks and the vocals that went on for a few minutes.
Right. So William, and talk about Ground Zero a little bit and some of the things that stand out to you about that research location.
I'll tell you, the thing about this is just truly, number one, is just the amount of activity that is there. And not only that, like Stephen said, we see what's called will-o'-the-wisp. You've heard of will-o'-the-wisp. I've heard of that, read stories about it. But you've actually got a light that starts at the ground.
Yeah.
And it goes up and it goes up and it goes way up. And we're sitting there shooting video of this will-o'-the-wisp, and it's a light that's supposed to lure other hunters or seamen into the woods there. When we get through, there's no video of will-o'-the-wisp, and we're both doing it on our phone. So you're trying to have this right there. Again, we have some other cryptids that have shown up on there while we've been down at Ground Zero, and they're not things that I recognize as being a being. It's not. Some of them kind of look like a Bigfoot, but some of them don't. And you're thinking, oh my gosh, what is this? So with that part right there that we have there, we have some other beings that are in there. Again, the acoustics up here from a Ground Zero. Anytime you do a call, it can be heard from a mile easily.
Oh yeah.
And boy, all of a sudden from a mile back, you're like, you get this call back from the Bigfoot. And you're like, oh man, that is really something. But Ground Zero has got, and the thing that made it really neat, like I said, my son was, after he got out of high school, he was preaching at a community up there, not too far, about probably 30 or 40 miles from where Stephen lives. And so as we were on the way back, daylight savings time had set up, and being a member of the Church of Christ, we have 2 services a day, and on Sunday. So we were getting home probably about 7 to 7:30, heading that way, and we had just left. And so as I'm looking down the road, I see something there walking on the side of the road, and I thought it was a hitchhiker, or else I thought it was somebody that was drunk, and I thought he's too close to the road. So anyway, I told my son, who's sitting there, he's looking at his phone, and I'm doing the driving. I said, watch this guy up here. He said, it's either hitchhiker or drunk. I said, don't let him throw a rock or anything, beer can through the window there and hit you. So he just looks up and he goes back to paying attention to what he's doing on his phone. We get up there to where this thing is, and all of a sudden this thing, and they actually have to, you've seen it on the Patterson-Gimlin film, they actually have to turn their whole bodies because their chin will strike the way their muscular is, it will strike him in the shoulder. He turns his whole body and looks, and I hollered at my son. I said, Reese, it's a Bigfoot. And I slammed on the brakes, which is probably it's a reaction, but it's probably the stupidest thing I could have ever done, because if that gives him time to get me, that he don't need, I'm the one that needs the help. But anyway, and so whenever he did, I could see him cross the road in my tail lights. And so he went back over there. And then when first time Stephen and I went out, and he had a sickness in his family, so we just had to improvise, and we both improvised. I said, well, I've got a good area, Stephen. And he said, well, I've got one up here too. Coincidentally, it's the same area. Mm-hmm. And so that was just really, I said, we got those 3 that night. And then I came up there, I think it was on February 18th, the end of that year, and then got one crossing the road on me up there. He crossed. I thought it was a hunter up there fixing to cross. And all of a sudden he takes off running. And man, I was driving 70 miles an hour down a gravel road trying to get another look at this Bigfoot. And so finally I see him when he goes up over the hill, and then there he is. But then again, starting there in March of that year, which is 2019, we got, I counted them the other day, in 31 days of March of 2000, we got 27 different pictures of Bigfoot creatures or Bigfoot animals. I mean, we got albinos, we got little babies, we got white ones, we got big ones, we got ones we call skeletors. They tend to have more like a visual bone structure in their faces rather than they do. We got one there that's got a snout. And so it was amazing just how many there really were. And I've still got them on my phone. Thank goodness for my cell phone. It's kind of like a records keeper for me. Yeah. And we had a place called the Candy Store where we would leave them candy and place the candy bars in between 2 logs like this right here. And so that would give us more time to get the pictures if they came along. And man, just about every day we were getting pictures.
Yeah. The thing that stuck out to me about Ground Zero upon introduction to it, and even now, even being there yesterday, and every time we go back, I am reminded, is just how thick those woods are. I've termed this place the Amazon of America, because you can literally step in there 5 feet and you vanish.
Yes.
And some of the photographs that the game cams have picked up, and the game cams that you guys have placed out there aren't just like, sticking on a tree someplace in plain vision. You guys the Sasquatch are very creative. And so we have to be very creative as well, in brush piles, in hollowed out logs. I mean, you're cross gridding, you guys really put thought into this and being strategic about it. But that research area, you can hide anything in there. Before I was introduced to that area, I wasn't really that much of a dogman believer. However, in seeing some of the photographs that our game cameras have picked up and hearing the stories and seeing the tracks, now I'm sold on and not only on that, but seeing some of those game camera photos. The Lord only knows what else could be out there.
Right.
And the Lord also knows, if you look at Stephen Hill's camera that he actually got when he got a brand new camera, and we had run our game cameras, we had run the SD cards in a backwards way. He's got his actual cell phone camera, and as we're walking up, Stephen goes, stop. And we're always joking with each other. Yeah. And I said, what am I doing? He goes, no, stop. And there's a dog man walking up from the bottom of the deal. Yeah. And it looks like a blasted hyena on steroids. I mean, it's 7.5 foot tall. It's just huge. But the funny thing is, he's leading 3 Bigfoot up out of that bottom right there, and he is in the lead. And so whenever all of a sudden we stop and they see us, the Bigfoot just kind of go down into the grass and disappear. They didn't disappear. They just, that's what deer do as well. The animals, they go down. But we're still sitting there looking at the dog, man. Steven's taking a few more pictures. I perused the pictures later on, and we've got a picture of a mama that's escorting a young juvenile away from this activity right there. And you can tell it's a little mama because the anatomy, you see the anatomy of the female right there. And then also perused another, and there's a baby dog, man, that has run underneath a leaning log over there. It's hiding, sitting there watching the show, you know.
Yeah.
So, but it is when you get there and you realize that these things are actually real, and it takes a place like this, like you said, to actually hide something like this where they feel comfortable. We learned the grid trick from my wife. Actually, Stephen and I got a picture of a 9-footer we call Brownie jumping across the trail. So my wife goes with us up there a couple of days later, and she takes her digital camera, and me and Stephen are again setting the game cameras. And whenever we do, she's just off there by herself. Well, I'm trying to keep an eye on her as well. And she goes in there and she's just kind of doing the grid deal. Like I said, we stop here, then we go here, and then go here. And so you can just put them together in a piecemeal like this right here. Well, she's got a couple of finalists here take a picture. Didn't think anything about it. We're on the way back to Texarkana. My wife goes, "What is this right here?" So I pulled over to the side of the road and looked, and man, I just nearly laughed out loud. And I said, "Well," I said, "Do you want the good news or the better news?" She goes, "Well, give me the good news." I said, "Well, you got a mama Bigfoot right here." And she goes, "A mama Bigfoot?" And I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "Well, what's the better news?" I said, "You've got a baby at each knee." So she's actually got her first picture. She's in the woods 6 minutes. Me and Steven are in here for years. She's in the woods 6 minutes, and she gets her first picture of Bigfoot plus the two babies. And we heard about it, and we're still reminded of it.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Matt Slater.
Yeah.
You hear about an amazing research area like this. What are your thoughts and questions about this special place?
Well, I was thinking if we could get that photo back up there, the wide shot, just to give everybody an impression of just how dense that is. I mean, 5 feet, you go in there and you're gone.
Mm-hmm.
Just completely disappeared. And that's just impressively dense. Like you're saying, you can hide anything in there.
This is the first week of April before there's very much foliage out there either. This is the first week of April when Daniel took that picture right there. So you can imagine what it's like a little bit later on.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we've actually had that photo. L.A. Marzulli actually contacted us and requested to use that photo at one of his conferences that he was speaking at, and that's how impressed he was by it. And it's gotten a little bit of attention. Of course, it's a great honor when we as a team have somebody who's well-known, an author and lecturer and filmmaker, asking to use one of our photos. So that was really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's great with that research area too, how dense it is, but there's also access.
Yes.
That allows, sight lines, and just doing observations and stuff like that, to have breaks in the trees to allow you to have that chance. Just gives it a little bit more of an edge to the research, because clearly in this photo here, you can see, how dense the forest is, but that's the edge. And there's edges to the tree lines, probably just more than one place. So you have plenty of opportunity to set up stuff and to catch sightings, to catch visuals of the creatures that you're looking for. It's just so impressively dense, just in that one small photo.
And we haven't shared this information yet, but about 15 minutes after we get that photo, we go down to another place where there's a new clear cut, and there's a big brown female walking across this field. And I'm all excited. I'm going to get my first video of Bigfoot walking. Well, she stops and turns around, and we have a staring contest. And I was bound determined I was going to get a picture of Bigfoot moving, but she wouldn't move. She just stood there. But I kept seeing something moving right through here. And so I told Daniel, I'm going to need to go. I said, I'm just go ahead and just take a couple of still shots. And this is, like I said, just a little bit right after that same day. Yeah. Take a picture. I come back and blow it up, and you can see Mama, and you can see her eyes. You can see the nose. She has kind of a longer nose. But then you can see the baby, and you can see his eyes and nose as well in there. And so whenever we got that right there, and again, I went back 2 days later after me and Daniel had been there. I wasn't going down that tree while Bigfoot was there, knowing there was babies there, even if I would have had the opportunity to know it was there. But I went back 2 days after that. I put a meter stick up there. That Bigfoot that you just saw a picture of is 10.5 foot tall from the
Wow.
ground up there to the top. Now, man, I'm 6'2". That's 4.5 foot taller than almost 1 2/3 of me. And man, I was just so amazed. But that's not the only one we've seen. Stephen and I, like I said, we got the one there that destroyed the camera. He's over 10 foot tall, over 1,000 pounds. And that's what you're not ready for when you see Bigfoot.
Yeah.
You're ready for the big size discrepancy. I got a picture not too long ago, probably 2 to 3 weeks ago, Stephen. And it's one we call Blackie. And Blackie is probably, and this is no lie and no exaggeration, he's probably 4.5 to 5 foot wide at the shoulders, over 9 foot tall. We were there yesterday, weren't we, Daniel?
Yeah.
And the way that we can grid there, we have a feeder right there, and where the top of the feeder is 7.5 foot tall. It's 3 foot tall right there than what it is otherwise. So that you're able to go back, and we don't just take these, oh, well, look what I got. No, we go back and check ourselves, folks, not to just throw stuff at you, and whistle in the wind. We go back and check ourselves. And when you see things like that right there, and you see just how big it is. So that means a whole lot more to our research, because, we're trying to get out here and make it realize for folks how, yes, these things are real, so that everybody else can be safe. But then also, man, we enjoy this.
Oh, yeah.
I enjoy Stephen's company. Like I said, we joke around, have a good time. I enjoy when my wife goes out there. I'm hoping that we'll get a chance to have her on video pretty soon, or have her on podcast, and let you hear just how unhappy she is with me going to the store for a 10-minute visit, and it taking 45 minutes for us to get back home, because I've seen somebody that knows that I'm a Bigfoot researcher. So
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
If I could say one thing here too, is looking at that photo and talking about how tall these creatures are in comparison to the surroundings, the trees that they're hiding behind, the shrubbery, the brush, and stuff like that. And I've been sitting here thinking, and for the life of me, I cannot remember where I heard this advice for people who are out there doing field research or hunting Sasquatch. The natural tendency for humans is to look for things at about our height, 5 to 6, maybe 6.5 feet off the ground, looking for facial structures or body structures or stuff like that. And possibly one of the reasons why a lot of people miss things in the woods when they're looking for Sasquatch is because they're looking about 4 feet too low. They need to look higher.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Remember to do that.
Yeah. And that's an amazing photo that our team was able to capture.
Yeah.
And like Stephen and William said, this is just one of many, but what an amazing location. Gentlemen, it's been an absolute honor being able to join you guys finally together.
Yeah.
Together on one podcast. And we'd also like to say a special hello out to our other co-host, Paul Ayat, who's been feeling really under the weather. And wanted to say hello to him, and we hope he's feeling better soon. In closing, we'd like to thank the Texarkana Podcast Studio for hosting us today. They've been especially gracious and easy to work with. So if you're in that Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana area, and you have studio needs, we highly encourage you to reach out to Texarkana Podcast Studio. They will do you good.
Could not have been treated any better.
Absolutely.
Absolutely right.
So we've got stuff coming up. You've got that big documentary, William. We've got the Keith Crabtree camp out coming this weekend that we're all three going to be at. You've got the documentary. You've got your book, Searching for the Unfindable. So a lot of stuff going on. So, gentlemen, any last thoughts?
I'm so honored to have these two guys as my research partners. These men are smart men, folks. They're not just guys that go out in the woods, helter-skelter, random around, say, oh, let's look for Bigfoot. These guys, me and Stephen and Daniel, we have a point to our research. We generally have something we're trying to either prove or disprove. If what we see along the way is a bonus, but what we're trying to prove to people so you can have your own, we can find classic Sasquatch behavior so you can have your own encounters as well. So again, very honored to have these men here, impeccable reputations. And I'm probably the blip on their, on their reputation, but I'm very glad. And again, like I said, and so thankful to the studio for what they provided for us and this avenue to bring this podcast to you folks there. And thanks to our service people and our first responders and our veterans, those who have done all the things it's taken so that, again, we can do this as a hobby and then while they're out there laying their lives on the line for us to be able to do this. So thank you to them, and I mean that with all my heart. You know,
Absolutely.
I do.
Stephen, any closing thoughts?
It's thoroughly enjoyed it.
Absolutely.
It's been my pleasure to be here with you and William today.
Thank you. Matt Slater.
And Matt, I'm sorry, Matt.
No, don't worry about it. It's,
Sorry, I didn't mean
thank you for
to.
having me on the show.
No,
To be able to meet Stephen and Will, it's such a great honor. It truly is.
Matt's a good host, man. You guys
Yes.
are bringing some good questions, some good information here to these folks, and I really appreciate y'all for that. You know, these guys, Matt's a smart guy as well. I've got to talk with him several times. Really enjoy that. I always look forward to being here speaking with him as well. So, Matt, thank you too, buddy.
Oh, you're welcome.
All right. So for myself, for Matt Slater, for our other co-host who's not with us, Paul Ayat, thank you for joining us on Cryptid Wilderness Research. And again, it's been an honor at the Texarkana Podcast Studio. So take care and we'll see you next time.